what is it about Jensen that concerns you that he's even on the list of possibilities of having this immensely powerful role?
He was a key figure in this domestic terror push against January 6ers. According to testimony before the House, he treated them all as terrorists and was one of the key instigators in pushing the narrative within the bureaucracy that these folks needed to be jailed and ferreted out.
So they're talking about Steve Jensen, who was recently named the assistant director of the FBI's Washington field office. Now, this comes as a shock to conservatives who were counting on FBI Director Kash Patel to clean up the bureau, because Jensen was a key figure in the domestic terror push against January 6th protesters. Blaze News investigative journalists Steve Baker and Joe Hanneman detailed this development in a piece for Blaze News, and Steve joins us right now. So what should we make of this decision to have Steve Jensen out there in the Washington field office?
What should we make of it? I will tell you, this is the most confounding thing to come out of the administration thus far, especially out of the new FBI, the new Department of Justice. As you know, we expected and we hoped that Kash and Dan Bongino collectively would be a wrecking ball in that agency or that bureau. In fact, that's what they alluded to and told us that they would do in so many interviews and in Kash Patel's own book. We gave them here at the Blaze, and myself included, our full-throated endorsement of their nominations. We applauded their confirmations, and we look forward to the best, and we still hope for the best from them. But this one doesn't make any sense for a lot of reasons. The first and most significant thing is that this happened over a week and a half ago, when this was announced internally through an email that was sent to about 2,500 FBI employees there in the Washington field office. This announcement was made to them. Obviously, you can't send out an email in D.C. to 2,500 people and not expect it to be leaked to the press somewhere, to somebody. And in fact, on Friday of last week, the New York Times, not in an article about this, but kind of parenthetically, 6 or 7 paragraphs down, just mentioned this appointment as though it actually really happened. And they were even confounded. They said this seemed to be kind of contrary to what Kash Patel has promised the MAGA movement, the Trump supporters, and the J6 community. And then the next day, Gateway Pundit came out and said that it was fake news and that they had that on a highly placed source in the FBI. Well, then, of course, we acquired, through the Blaze Media, that email confirming that this had actually happened. In fact, that he was already an employee, but it was not announced in any way. This was done kind of, surreptitiously under the cover of darkness. Nobody announced it. There was no press release. There was no announcement from Kash Patel or any other FBI spokesman. And it wasn't until we caused a ruckus through our X thread on Sunday that finally, after reaching out to the FBI Washington field office yesterday, that they finally responded and said, just go check the website. And we did. And we went to the WFO website, and Stephen Jensen's name has been added as acting director in charge. And that's the only confirmation we have so far, that he's actually in that position.
Steve, give us a little more color on Jensen and why people are so upset. What did he do? What did he do? Why are people so upset?
Well, it's the part of the agency that he was in charge of. I mean, he was tasked with heading up the actual investigation all the way through the prosecution of these individuals that were charged with crimes. As you know, myself, I was caught up in this dragnet as well, being a journalist on that day, and so I may or may not have some personal feelings about this, but trying to put those aside as best I can and be straightforward. And as a journalist on this, there were a lot of lives that were ruined. My life was not destroyed. We've talked about that ad nauseum, so we don't need to go in that at all here, but a lot of lives were destroyed. We're talking about misdemeanor defendants, nonviolent defendants, families that were SWAT raided by FBI SWAT teams at 6:30 in the morning, guns up, on their family, on their children, on their wives. People lost their homes, they lost their jobs, their careers, they were kicked out of their churches, they lost their marriages, all manner of family destruction and lives that were ruined as a result of this process. And this guy was at the actual forefront. He was the tip of the spear in the agency that was seeing this forward. And then, of course, as we know, as they established this narrative, the left, the Biden administration, saw this as an extra advantage to go after all of the basic conservative protesting type of organizations. We're talking about the families that protested at your local school board meetings. We're talking about the traditional Catholics and such as that. And this guy was in charge of that and advocating that they go ahead and move forward in all these positions and all of these initiatives as well.
Well, you talked about narrative. I think that that's one of the more interesting parts of Jensen's particular story. Tell our audience about the twice daily phone calls that he was a part of.
Yeah, this was a surprise to me as I began to pull back the layers of the onion on this story over the weekend. In 4 years of my own investigations into all things January 6th, I had no idea that there was a twice daily phone call that began only 2 days after January 6th, in which the FBI was inviting in, through one of their special resources that they have, all of the policing agencies across the country, local, state police, as well as the governor's mansions, as well as the mayoral residences and offices at every city in America. They could sign in twice daily and get the narrative, the marching order, and the agenda that was being portrayed. And this was basically, I don't even know any other way to say it. This was a national forum for which they were able to indoctrinate all of the law enforcement agencies across the country, the mayor's offices, the governors across the country, and teach them, tell them, and show them how to go out and prosecute these individuals. Now, look, I've said from the beginning, had the Department of Justice not overreached from the very beginning, had it just gone off after the most violent offenders that day, we probably wouldn't even be talking about January 6th right now. There probably would have been no pardons that day. But the overreach was so egregious. It was so massive. In some ways, despite the lives that were destroyed, they kind of did us a favor and showed their hand when they turned that card over and showed us what they were willing to do and how far they were willing to push to go after innocent victims, what I call the accidental tourists that day, the grandmothers or the young couples that walked in, had never been in the Capitol before. They walked through an open door, took a couple of selfies, and their lives were destroyed and ruined. And this was spearheaded by Stephen Jensen, the now acting director, or rather the assistant director in charge of the Washington field office in D.C. itself.
Okay, and here's the interesting thing about this story, right? I mean, this is appalling that this guy would be promoted. It's clear they knew who he was because they, as you've made clear, they were quiet about it, right, until they were poked. Yeah. They didn't issue a press release or anything like that. So they knew he was a problem. So what do the they that we're talking about say? And, of course, many in our audience, and I think all of us, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino seem like great people who are dedicated to the cause and there to implement the agenda. So this is awful puzzling. Now, Dan Bongino has said, he's responded to the backlash on X, saying this. He said, I want to reassure you that nothing that is happening here is happening by accident. Because of the sensitivity of what the FBI deals with, both the director and I have to be circumspect in what we can make public. Bad guys read this stuff too. Neither one of us came here to play games. And let me go to the next one as well. I mean, in another post, he added, when you see something happen and the entire story isn't public and the underlying facts aren't all public, it may appear counterintuitive to a reform agenda. Hint, hint. I promise you, it's not an accident. So here is Bongino going out of his way to say, as this firestorm grows, what we were saying earlier, trust the plan, right? I mean, he's saying, like, trust the plan. There is a plan. We have to do this for various reasons. Behind the scenes, some of us have heard different accounts of what those reasons are. So what do you make of that?
Well, we are assuming that Bongino was responding to this controversy. Right. He does not specifically address it. Right. If, in fact, he was responding to that, it still does not answer one of the hardest questions that I think, and one of the most important questions that I have, is why have we been a week and a half into this appointment and there's been no announcement from the FBI, not even the lowest level public relations or spokesperson from the FBI. There's been no announcement from Kash Patel. There's been no press release. Look, when Stephen Jensen was appointed as special agent in charge of the field office in Columbia, South Carolina, there was a press release about that. There's always fanfare. There's always an announcement about important positions when they are filled like this. And for him to take over the most important position in the Washington field office with no announcement, no press release, and then after millions of tweets and reposts and articles now that have gone out about this and the controversy around it and the backlash that's happening, and still the only thing that we have seen posted from Kash Patel on his X account so far is the intramural fundraising hockey game that they had in Chicago over the weekend, and maybe a couple of other arrests, but nothing to do with this particular controversy whatsoever. So they are obviously ignoring it for some reason, and what Bongino is asking us to do is trust the plan. So I don't know what else to do except wait and see. But we still have the lingering question: why are you elevating who is clearly a bad actor in the January 6th story instead of eliminating those bad actors as we were promised?
Well, I know one thing, Steve. I know that you are definitely going to be staying on this story. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Jill.
And MP, when we look at the story, there are just a lot of questions that are still around it. And like I said, just wait and see. Give them a little bit of time, maybe. Well,
trust but verify. I mean, what Steve is doing, what Joe did in the article is lay out. This is why people are upset. It's understandable why. And we'll see what happens, but we can trust that Bongino comes through, but we need to hold people accountable as well, and that is exactly what we'll do.